Committee meeting on Wednesday, April 14th, 2021. This meeting is going to be video recorded and can be seen on local channel 18 and on the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. The meeting is a Zoom meeting pursuant to the emergency order of Governor Baker. So welcome aboard, and Roy is here, but we're going to go to minutes first to get that out of the way, and then we'll go on to an interview. Looking at the minutes, anybody have any comments, additions, subtractions, corrections to them? George, did you raise your hand?
No.
Okay. Anyone? All right, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
That was George. All right, hold on, let me get my notes to make sure I help your old Karen out. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Rick. Okay. Okay, now hold on a second. We're gonna have votes today, so this is going to be the order I'm gonna call the votes all day. So be ready to know you're placed in line so we can get through as quickly as possible. Let's see. So Steve.
Yes.
Mary.
You're muted, Mary.
You're muted, Mary.
Yes.
Yeah, Mary, okay. Mary. Russ.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
And Jerry is a yes, that's 8-0. So now we go to the next item on the agenda, which includes vacancies on our committee. As you all know, that Steve Zebel resigned due to work requirements, feeling he could not devote the time needed for the Finance Committee. We've had an application from Roy Meroli, who is on the call with us today. You've all seen his application, and I think I also sent around his additional resume. I've had the opportunity to talk to Roy twice, so it's going to be more of listening to Roy and having you ask a lot of questions. But I think the first thing we should do is briefly, very briefly, introduce ourselves to Roy, and we'll go around. So I'll start. I'm Jerry Siricel, the chairman of the Finance Committee. I bought a house in Eastham in 1988, moved here in 2013, spent my career in Washington, D.C., in many jobs. I couldn't hold a job for a long time, I guess, as a head of government affairs for a trade association, legal advisor to chairman of the Federal Trade Commission, Postal Rate Commission, and also the deputy general counsel of the Committee on Post Office and Civil Service, the House of Representatives. Steve?
Hi, Roy.
Hi, Steve.
I'll use Jerry's format. I have a house here since '92. I've been a full-time resident since '09. When I retired as the president of the Council of Better Business Bureaus, which is a national organization of better business bureaus. Here in Eastham, I was on the Finance Committee, then was elected moderator, then stepped down as moderator and got appointed to the Finance Committee again just this past year.
Thanks. Mary? Mary?
Hi, Roy.
Hi, Mary.
I'm the only woman on the group, so be nice. I've built a house here in 1985. I've been living here full-time since 1999. My background is 30 years in the insurance industry, mainly in the financial actuarial end of things. I'm currently chair of the Board of Trustees of the Eastham Public Library. I've been there for 12 years and was heavily involved with the building of the library, the new library. I've been on the Board of Finance for 4 or 5 years. I'm on the Strategic Planning Committee and the Community Preservation Committee. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Russ?
Roy, Russ French, I've been on the Finance Committee on and off for about 20 years. Built a house here in '99, have lived here since 2001. Was Chairman of the Finance Committee for 4 or 5 years. I was in the semiconductor industry in marketing and sales, mostly sales, covering the East Coast, Canada, and the Midwest. Welcome. Glad to meet you, Roy. You got a great
Nice
resume.
meeting you, Russ.
Hey, Peter?
Hi, Roy. Peter Wade. Let's see, I was a home builder on the Cape in Eastham and the Lower Cape pretty much for pretty close to 50 years, and built my own house in Eastham in 1978 and lived here ever since. I've been on various committees in town over the years. I've been on the Community Preservation Committee for 10 years now. I think this is my 10th year. So, and on the Finance Committee for 2 terms, I believe. So thank you.
Right. Okay, thanks. Tom?
Hi, Roy. Tom Gardner.
Thanks, Tom.
I've been coming to the Outer Cape my entire life. I bought a seasonal property in 1985 and we come here on vacations and weekends. And in 2009, about a year-round home with the intent of hopefully retiring early and being able to come out here full time. And I was able to do that in 2014. And so that's where I am right now. And I have been on the Finance Committee for, I think this is my 4th year now. And I'm the Finance Committee rep to the Rock Harbor Improvement Committee.
All right. Thanks, Tom. George?
We built our home in Eastham in 1995 as a second home, and then moved here as full-time residents in 2016. I was an attorney in private practice in upstate New York, Syracuse, for my entire professional career. I've been on the Finance Committee. I filled a part of a term, and then this is my first full term.
Thanks. Rick?
Yeah, hi. We bought our home in 2005. We moved here permanently in 2008 when we retired. I was at GE for the first part of my career in finance and information technology roles. Then I worked in the biopharmaceutical world, Biogen IDEC, in IT for a while, and then I led a patient services group, and finishing up my first term on the board.
All right. And I'd like, Rich, we might as well have you introduce yourself. You're mute. There you go.
Hi, Roy. I'm Rich Bienvenu. I'm the Assistant Town Administrator and Finance Director for the town. Prior to which I was in Yarmouth in a similar role, Town of Yarmouth, and I had my own public accounting and consulting firm for cities, towns, and small businesses for about 20 years prior to that, in which I was a partner.
Great. And Roy, I'm sorry, our town administrator, Jackie Beebe, has a conflicting meeting on water that she is attending right now, so she may join later, but if not, she clearly would have introduced herself and said hello. So Roy, I'm going to open it to you to say a little bit about yourself and potentially why you're willing to take your turn and try and join this group.
Okay, I guess to start like everyone else, we bought a house in Eastham in 1996 on Ireland Way, and you may recall the house burnt down in 2014.
Yeah.
And that was our house. So obviously I was a major proponent of fire hydrants. on Ireland Way. We rebuilt in 2014 and moved into it in 2015. We've been, I guess, what you call us is non-residents. We are in the process of relocating. We've sold our current residence in New York, Poughkeepsie, New York, and we'll be moving up the end of May, early June. So my work experience has been in higher education my whole life, both in the public sector, primarily the public sector. I spent about 28 years in the public sector, first with the community college system. When I first started, I helped start 2 community colleges. Then I worked in the state university system as a vice president for finance and administration. And I also did a stint as the financial vice president for the entire state university system. I decided to try something different. So I applied at a private university or private college in New York, in Poughkeepsie, New York, Marist College, right on the Hudson River. And I didn't think I'd be there very long, but surprisingly, I ended up staying there 22 years. Most of it in administration as the executive vice president, chief operating officer. But my last 8 years, I spent teaching in the Master of Public Administration program there. And I taught innovation in public administration, public budgeting, and introduction to public administration. So that's a thumbnail of my experience. So I've worked in the world of budgeting and finance in both the public sector and nonprofit sector. So I believe I have a good understanding of the budget development process and how the process intersects with politics and how the two can work together, and unfortunately, also how they can work in opposition. I certainly always try to get them to work together. That's always been my approach. I've watched the finance committee and Zoom meetings, I think probably 4 of them. As you went through your budget development process, which I think was a very comprehensive one, and Rich was very helpful throughout that whole process. I saw that. And I think your committee really reflects a lot of teamwork in terms of working together. It was nice to see how you unanimously went about supporting the renovation at the high school. You all got behind it, and I think that probably made a difference in terms of the vote. And that was a good thing to see. So I think I've got the appropriate skill set to serve on the committee and hopefully be a helpful member on the committee. I guess, and I've watched Zoom meetings of the select board also, the combination of the finance committee and select board. And I could see a synergy there between what you do and how you keep the select board informed and how you work together. So it's a committee that interests me, and hopefully I could be of service and help the committee. That concludes it.
Thank you, Roy. I appreciate it. So I'll go down the list for any questions that I had on voting and kind of join in so we can do it. So I'll start with Mr. Cole. Steve?
Thank you, Jerry. I don't have any questions. I just have one comment. And in my opinion, your resume was written for the position. So
Thank you,
I have
Steve.
nothing further. It seems like a no-brainer to me, but
That makes me feel good. Thank you.
yeah, well, thank you for applying.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yes, but that's one of the things that's important is to try and get people to work. I told Steve when he said something like that to me that your resume put mine to shame, but whatever. Mary, do you have any questions?
Hi, Roy.
Hi, Mary.
I'm happy to hear that you have attended some of the Zoom meetings of the Board of Finance and also of it sounds like our joint meetings with the Select Board. Because I did notice in the volunteer application that you signed back in January, that you said that you had never attended any of the committee meetings. You hadn't read the charge and you hadn't met with anybody. And I understand you have now met with Jerry once or twice. So that was one of my concerns, that you were applying for a job that you hadn't taken any time to attend any of the meetings and to talk to folks on the committee. So I agree with the folks that have spoken so far and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mary. I look forward to working with you.
Yeah. Oh, one thing before I go to you, Russ, that I forgot to say, Roy also, I had a joint phone call with Roy along with Art Arturino, who's our select board liaison, which is another box that needs to be checked for someone coming in. So we've done that as well. Russ, any questions, comments, or concerns, whatever?
Yeah, Roy, I just, like to say that your resume, more than qualifies you for position on this board. And I guess my only question is, when you do move down here, do you have any restrictions on making meetings or any potential of taking extended vacations during our busy time, which is January through March?
I'd like to head south for some time in the winter. I don't know if you'll continue working on Zoom, I guess. If not, I'll do what I have to do. If it means that I have a cold winter, I guess I have a cold winter. I understand that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Peter.
No, I can't add any questions. I don't believe it, but thanks for applying, and it sure seems like you're very well qualified, and I hope you find the work challenging.
Thank you.
Tom?
I think that Roy is certainly qualified and would be a great addition. And the fact that he's been a part-time seasonal resident for a while, I think is helpful as well. So I definitely would support his candidacy.
Good. George?
I would certainly echo everything that everybody has said. And the only thing that I would add is that with Roy's background as a professor of public administration, he may actually provide us with some tutorials on how we can improve our work. So, I see that as a very positive addition to our group.
All right, thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
Okay, Rick?
Yeah, I just reinforce basically what everyone says, and I'll apologize to Roy for the noise I contribute over on Ireland Way at the pickleball courts.
Okay.
There's some aggressive playing going on there. Yes.
Yeah. Rich, do you have anything you would like to ask or anything like that?
I think you guys have covered it great. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're at the point now. This is an open meeting, and Roy can see whatever anybody says on the vote. So I don't think there's any reason to boot them off the call at this point in time. So do I hear? We're at the point where we can, in essence, appoint Roy. Now, if we do that, he has to go through the select board, and then he has to go through the ethics, the ethics course, and pass that, and then get sworn in before he can actually have portfolio to be on the committee. But this is step number one.
Jerry,
So,
Jerry, before,
yes.
Jerry, The select board doesn't have a role in this appointment.
Yeah, Steve.
I think
you
it's
and
very
I-
important that you stick to your guns on that. It's this committee's appointment, and there's just no ambiguity about it.
Okay, all right.
They've
I will,
incorrectly over the years made appointments that they weren't supposed to and had to rescind them. So let's be careful.
gonna-
This is our appointment.
Okay, this is all right. So do I have a motion?
Jerry, I have a question.
Question, go ahead, George.
What is the term that Roy would assume? Is he filling out
Yeah.
Steve Zerbel's term, or is he starting a brand new 3-year term?
He's filling out the term, so that his term, I think it ends in 2022. So next year, we will have a vacancy. In essence, we can reappoint Roy, or you can try and find someone else to appoint for one of the finance committee positions. Okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, do we hear a motion one way or the other?
I make a motion that we take a vote on Roy and appoint him as a member.
Okay,
I
Thank
second
you.
the motion.
and Rick is a second. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go through the roll call. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes,
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes,
Rick,
Yes,
and I'll vote yes as well. So, Roy, there are a few hoops you got to go through. I'm going to let people know, but welcome. You don't have portfolio to vote today, but you can stay on as we talk. And if you have something to say about any of the warrants, I think that the committee would enjoy hearing whatever you have to say on that. Now, we have one more issue. We have a term that's ending in June, and that is Peter Wade. Pete can be appointed for one more term right at the moment. I don't know the new charter hasn't been approved. And Pete has said that he was interested, if the committee was interested in reappointing Peter for another term on the finance committee. So I think you know us all, Peter, so we won't introduce ourselves. And so anything you would like to say, the floor is yours, Peter.
Okay. No, I don't have much of a campaign speech, but I enjoy being on the committee. I think I do offer some institutional knowledge with my almost 50 years of living in town and being involved with the political end of things here. So, but I certainly am not the financial expert that a lot of you are. But so I'd like to continue and to try to help wherever I can.
All right. Thanks, Peter. Anyone have any questions or comments for Pete? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll move.
Steve,
Second.
do I have a second? I didn't hear the second.
second.
That was Russ. Okay. Any other?
point of clarification, please, Jerry.
George, yes.
Whose appointment is this?
This is Peter's appointment.
It's finance.
I know, but who does the
Oh,
appointing? Is it this committee? Is it the select board, or is it the moderator?
It's a finance committee appointment. Up this year
Okay,
are,
you've
yeah,
answered my
up this-
question.
just so everybody knows, up this year are Peter, who's a finance committee appointment, Rick, who is a select board appointment, and me, and I am a moderator appointment. Okay, so those are the terms that are up. Any more comments on the motion to reappoint Peter. Okay, we'll go through the vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George.
Yes,
did you just vote for
I was
yourself?
expecting you to vote no, Pete. Actually, and Rick.
My mother always told me to vote for myself. Then she
Rick's
got
a
one
yes.
vote.
And Jerry is a yes, as well. Why, I don't know, maybe I should have skipped you, but that's okay. Hey, you run for office, you vote for yourselves,
That's
so.
right.
Oh,
That's right.
all right, the next items on the agenda is the town warrant. And what you have, I've sent it out, and I think that, and thank you to Rick, excuse me, to Rich, I'll get that, I keep messing that up, to Rich and Lori and Karen and Jackie for having hard copies available at the town hall. This is of course, the final, the draft that we currently have. And I want to go through it straight from the beginning to the end. There are no petition articles. And my goal is, unless we have some really tough questions, to try and take a vote, recommendation vote as far as we go on each warrant article. We may, if there is a change, because this is still a draft, although I don't expect major changes, we might have to come back and re-vote on some things, but I think it's best for us to get moving and go through this as quickly as we can. The nominations only took a little less than a half an hour, which is great. So I'd like to get started. One of the things to remember on this is every vote has to be to recommend this to the town, and then we vote yes or no. So even if we all wanted to vote no, we have to have a motion to recommend, a second to recommend, and then the vote would be 0 to 8. That's just the way it works. The other item that I will tell you is that I will be quickly working on a letter, which I'll have at least the first draft ready for a next meeting before May 1. That will have what additional comments if we want, and try and work on it. But we have to also want to put a letter in the front of the warrant, and I think it's going to the printer. And Rich, I'm going to ask, going to the printer, we should expect around May 1. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Jerry, I do have some last minute breaking changes. Would you like me to highlight those
Yeah.
so you have the latest?
Yeah,
Wait till we
yes.
get to those articles?
Let's go. Let's do it when we get right to each article. Is that okay with you,
Yep.
Rich?
That's great.
Okay. Article 1. You have any changes in Article 1, Rich?
Wait, Jerry?
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Before you get to Article 1, the copy that Rich, you provided, at least the copy I have, has the report of the Strategic Planning Committee in front of the report of the Finance Committee. The document itself is the annual warrant with Finance Committee report and recommendations. Unless you and Jackie had a specific reason for it, I think it might be good if the finance report were in front.
Yep, noted.
Big
Gotcha.
deal, but,
Yeah, I understand what you.
okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right. Article 1 is the authorization spending limits for revolving accounts. This is generally, this is done annually. And I don't have any questions. Anybody have any questions or comments on this one? All right, do I hear a motion to, and Mary, would you please, I'm going to write this down as well. Would you write it down so we can make sure and help Karen on all
Right.
these votes?
We
Thanks.
had a problem last time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Article 1, do I hear a motion to recommend this to to the citizens?
I'll recommend the article.
That's Russ. Do I hear a second?
Mary,
Second.
I will second it.
That's Mary. Any other comments or anything? Okay, let's go with the vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes,
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes. So that's an 8-0 vote. Okay. Article 2A is an apple. This one is going to take a bit more time.
how are you gonna do this?
What we normally do, what normally happens on this, if you go to the page which lists the budget items, we have there's a finance committee vote on each line item. What I'll try and do is group them together, but first let me go to Rich, ask him, are there any changes in this Article 2 operating budget that you want to raise with us?
Yes, there is.
Oh,
There's latest breaking information, and I don't expect anything further at this point. But when the school committee sent us their final budgets, they noted an error in the calculation of substitute wages. And so the amount for the Eastham Elementary School is now going to say $3,783,480, which is a little bit over a $6,000 increase.
okay.
Rich, could you say that again, please?
3,783,480.
And for the increase, decrease, that becomes what? The decrease becomes what?
105,581.
1,581. Okay.
And then the biggest change, unfortunately, we just learned Monday morning, the latest bond issue for the water project. The schedule of drawdown on that may or may not necessitate a debt service payment on that newest bond. And so we were sent a schedule from the Clean Water Trust reflecting that. And so that is about $100,000+ increase. So the debt
What-
service line
What
50,
line item is that?
line 52
Mm-hmm. Okay.
is going to be 4,816,601, which makes the increase 208,001.
100,000.
Wow. What does that do to our bottom line here?
And so the bottom line is going to be 32,807,105.
Does that change the percentage?
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Okay.
It's 1,409,420 increase.
Mhm.
Overall, 4.49%.
Almost 4.5%.
Okay. Oh,
But just for your information, I have, my sense of it is that we might not actually end up having to pay that. Since it is exempt debt, it gets added on to our tax levy. We're not going to be shorting it. We don't have to adjust anything else to account for it. If we end up not having to pay it, since it's raised from exempt debt, when we close the books on the year, we need to reserve that amount so that can't be used, doesn't become free cash since it was exempt for that purpose. And we would utilize it to reduce the tax the following year.
Following year.
okay. Thank you. All right. So what I'll try and do is take a look and go through some lines that look like, well, we can do this pretty closely. Lines, elected in general, lines 1 and 2, elected officer salary reserve fund. Anybody have any issues with that one? Can we take that? How about Does anybody have any issues with the town administration they want to discuss or raise? I think we,
Jerry, could you just ask if anybody has any questions on the first page, page 1, down through 28?
yeah, okay, I'll ask them. Anybody have any questions on the first page down through line 28, including the change in line 26 for Eastham Elementary School operations? I'm trying to look here at one thing. Rich,
I have a question.
yes, Mary, go.
Rich, because of COVID and because of what's going on with the school system, I've heard rumors, I think, that there might be some summer school this summer in order to keep their students up to date because of what's been going on for the last year and a half. Have you heard anything about that? And is that something that would be in this budget?
I've heard discussion on that. I have not heard anything regarding it being impactful to the budget. The summer, of course, June would be this fiscal year. July and August would be, this fiscal year.
Right.
But the town and the school district separately have received additional funding through the American Rescue Plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect
Could be
those
used,
will be applied
those could
first.
be used. Yeah, okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, I have one question looking at this. And I may have lost it. When we looked at the Community Preservation Act payments in here, in the article in the warrant, I didn't see anything for the town for a housing, affordable housing clerk.
You talking
And
about the coordinator? Are you talking about the
Coordinator.
coordinator?
yeah, the coordinator, where is that still in the process? Is that dropped, Rich?
No, that's
Where?
a good question, Jerry. I should have mentioned that to you because it's not readily apparent. The way I approached it is we like to keep everything in the operating budget to be as transparent. We don't like moving things around. So that affordable housing coordinator position is in the increase in the community development budget. And then in the motion to this article, we appropriate the total bottom line amount as printed in the warrant, and then we have to list funding sources. And so one of those funding sources would be the Community Preservation Fund unreserved fund balance.
Okay,
Just like it's the ambulance fund is a funding source, and
Right.
Various other funds.
okay.
For the full
Thank-
amount of the position
No, for 50%
and the other 50%?
is
Town.
within the levy.
And which line item does this come out of? 15? No, not 15.
Yeah,
Or, no, six,
I'm sorry?
Yes, line 15.
Okay, line 15 is where it would be, and that would be, both sources of funding would be there.
Oh, right. All
And
the
so you
funding.
don't need a separate CPA article.
No, and then the usual question I get, just in case anyone's wondering, and we do the same thing with the ambulance fund and other special funds. I'm very careful about tracking the expenditures on the line items for which those items fund. And if we have any savings on those line items, we always return the unspent money back to from which it came. So for whatever reason, maybe we have a late hire or whatever the case might be, if we don't fully fund that position, any unspent CPC money would go back to the CPC.
Rich, that's helpful. Is the reason you don't need a CPA article, is this coming out of the annual set aside that we have in the CPA funds? That's not the right word, set aside, but there's
Oh,
always.
no, I mean, the CPC, and to your point, I probably should check with council. I don't think we need to, but we're allowed to list all other available funds in our motions. A CPA article is a majority vote. This is a majority vote, as long as we're listing the funding source. But to your point, perhaps as our recommendations, and Peter, I'm not sure if Tina or Paul had mentioned this to you, Perhaps we ask the CPC, I think they've already recommended that article.
Yes.
And we put that recommendation on Article 2 as to that funding source.
Well, that's where I was going. It has been recommended by, that's not a hurdle for us. That's been done. Okay, great. Thanks for asking that, Jerry.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
I think
George.
it's probably worthwhile to ask council about that though, Rich. Because in the past, we've always voted on every CPA article on a standalone. So that, you know, a CPA article isn't official until town meeting approves it. I see what you're saying, but it does sort of bury it in here.
There's also a political reason.
Yeah,
It lets the town know that we're trying to make a serious effort on the one more aspect of the affordable housing
Coordinator.
crisis, and appointing this person is a very positive development.
Plus-
And you wouldn't know it unless you were at this meeting asking these questions.
I don't see the downside of leaving it in with the CPA articles and also listing it on here as a funding source. Do you,
Well, we
Rich?
can't have it in both spots, and that's kind of the challenge. It's kind of one or the other. And I thought it was more transparent to show the full operating budget. In the event that the CPC doesn't want to fund it, then the levy has to pick up the rest of it, you know, which is, you know, ultimately what'll happen. But I just thought it gave some consistency year over year to have that position in the budget, since it's, you know, how it's reporting.
Well, it also reflects an intention to make it a permanent position,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
which is a good thing, which cuts in favor of keeping it where you have it.
Yeah,
It may be summaries in the Warren article could accommodate everything that's been said so far.
Now, that's what I was going to suggest, is it will be in the motion, so it'll be evident, it'll be part of the vote. But if I updated the summary and the explanation to include that, that would be helpful.
it's also, this is an idea, you guys can shoot it down. I can add it in our letter. I can make that point in the letter to the town that goes in front of the warrant. Okay?
Yeah, so there's one other little thing, which is I'm pretty sure a CPA,
Yeah.
you know, a CPA committee can't vote one year to approve just payments for future years. So to make it a permanent thing, you'd have to make it clear every year. You know.
Yeah, I
the
think
voters
so.
are-
I think what Rich said, if CPA doesn't approve it in year for 2023, fiscal year 2023, then the levy has to pick it up.
Okay, I get it. So it would come to CPA committee every year though.
Yeah,
Right, if you were,
It should, I think. Yeah.
right,
yeah, well,
exactly.
yeah, Jackie would like to have those funds rather than have it come off the levy as well. I think.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, we can't just vote on it this year and have it go on forever. The CPC has to vote on it every year, I believe.
Yeah, nothing would change the process and the procedure that the CPC goes through. It's just where I've placed it in the warrant is a little bit different than typical.
And Rich, the notion of highlighting this in the motion, I think it's fine to put it in the motion. I think everyone might agree with me that most of the people at the town meeting aren't listening to the details of the Article 2 motion. Their eyes roll. And so anything you could do, like the summary or other steps you could take, Jerry mentioned the letter, would be a really positive thing you could do.
Yeah.
Got it.
I can't believe you think that no one sits there and listens to that stuff.
I'm not sure I listened so closely to it.
And you were the moderator. Okay. So now we're going to go through any other comments and anything on lines 1 through 28. All right. Do I have a motion to recommend to the town that they approve Article 2, lines 1 through 28?
I'll make the motion.
Steve, okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
And that was Russ.
Yep.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll go, we'll vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is also a yes, so that's 8-0. Now we go to lines 29, starts with Public Works salaries, going through, all the way through line 55, which has the amended change on line 52 for exempt debt services. So any questions, comments on lines 29 through 55? Okay, we spent a lot of time on these things before. I guess there's some advantage to that. Do I have a motion to recommend to the town that they approve Article 2, line items 29 through 55?
do we say as amended by Rich? Because of
As amended, yes, as amended.
I'll move.
That was who, I didn't hear who that was.
Steve, that's Steve.
Steve.
Steve again. Okay, second,
I'll second.
that's Rick was the second. Any other comments? Okay, we'll vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes as well. Now, I don't see, everything else is just an add-on. I don't think we have to vote on the grand total budget, right? Because that's just adding it all together. Well, so I think we don't have to do that.
So,
Anybody have any problem with that?
no,
nope.
Okay, we'll go to Article 2, B as in boy, or B, Bravo, it's Bravo, which is the Water Enterprise Fund operating budget. Anybody have any comments on that? Okay, I do. I will basically, on a matter of principle, vote no on this budget, on this article. And the reason I would say to vote no is because we look at the funding sources. It's all coming from the water revenue, which would cover the funding, which is absolutely fantastic. However, and I'm going to use an example of Steve Cole and Jerry Siricel. Steve Cole has water to his house. Jerry Siricel does not. So in 2022, Steve's payments for the water fund, for his water, will cover his use, but also cover the use of all the water in municipal buildings, the elementary school, and the high school. And Jerry Siricel will pay for none of the water going to the municipal buildings, the elementary school, and the high school. And I think that those funds should be, those water charges should be paid for by the taxpayer, not the water ratepayer, because there are two different entities. So because we zero out things coming from free cash and we don't have water charges in the budget for the library, for for the town administration, for the DPW, for the police, fire, for the elementary school, or for the high school. I just think this is just wrong and sets a wrong precedent. I'm not saying, and this is simple, can be simply fixed because we know the meter. We know how much water each of those entities use and can put in an amount and have that paid for out of taxpayer funds and not out of water revenue. For here, what it would do, it would increase the amount of money that comes in and can start to build up the capital reserve, which is necessary to eventually pay for repairs to water mains, et cetera, that are going to come. And that's just my statement. I don't think it's a lot of money. My thing could get me to vote yes if we put $500 in there just to start the process. And next year, I would expect to see the water charges for municipal buildings put in there, because I just think it's just incorrect to charge only water ratepayers and not taxpayers for public building water use. That's where I'm at.
So Jerry, you would charge everybody in town for the municipal buildings?
Yeah, yes, because it would come out of free cash or the general fund or the budget. Yes, everybody would pay for the water for the municipal buildings and these two schools.
Rich, what do you think?
If I had known that perspective at the time, I could have built that in. I would be happy to do that. I certainly can do that if that's the will of the committee going forward. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. The one thing I'd point out is we haven't, being a new enterprise fund, and this was going to be something I was going to bring up for your discussion over the next several months going into next year's budget process. But there are things not accounted for in this Article 2B that could be. So traditionally in other communities, there will be an allocation, indirect cost allocation for administrative salaries and costs. People that do water collect, town collector and treasurer, town administration. So we haven't done any of that, and the taxpayers are paying for that, and the water ratepayers are not. Likewise, there are some costs that I would consider direct that probably going forward I'd contemplate adding as a direct cost. For example, right now we have one employee, and that employee has health insurance, and that is funded out of our general fund, as is the actually determined amount for the pension, and OPEB, for example, is in the general fund. So there's costs in the general fund that we haven't allocated over the water that we could, both on a direct and indirect basis.
All right, thank you for that. That changes. I don't know if I want to write that in the letter. I would write it in the letter saying that here's what we think, but we also think that the Water Enterprise Fund in the future should cover all the costs. And
yeah, it's a really big philosophical discussion, and it's caused lots of problems in lots of towns. That's why now that we've got this second year and that had a balanced budget, so to speak, I thought it was appropriate going into this next year to have this discussion and see how we all feel about it. There's also things like utilities and electricity costs that are in the general fund. So there's some significant costs that could be allocated that haven't been.
Right, I didn't realize it, because I would imagine the utilities for running the pumps is fairly high.
Yes,
But
a lot of it is offset by some of the solar program that we have. So,
okay.
there's a lot to think about. So, but I get your point, Jerry.
Okay.
Aren't there two separate
Can I ask
questions?
Yeah, can I ask?
Hold on 1 second. Steve, you have the floor first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jerry. Rich, there are two separate questions. One is, what indirect costs actually exist in addition to the direct costs of using water? But then still leaves Jerry's question. Once you identify all the proper costs, who should be paying them? The citizen water users or
Everybody.
the taxpayers? And I don't know if Jerry's comfortable with this, but given the fact that we're not actually at break even yet, and we're using a good amount of general fund taxpayer revenues so far, it might be wise to say the town is actually contributing more than its costs are. I don't know how to say the words, but in the future, we'd like to see it properly allocated to, however you'd write that. But this year, I think maybe we're on safe ground. Are you okay with that, Jerry?
Yeah, I am. Rich's explanation, clearly the taxpayer is contributing to the water project in operations of the water project, which isn't shown here, which I think should be. I agree with Rich. You should put in the administrative costs. You should put in the electric costs and whatever in there, because we want this water fund to eventually be self-sustaining, including a provision for capital repairs, capital improvement, which is going to happen. I don't know how many years down the road, but 5-10 years down the road. So you want this to be a self-sustaining. So I would vote yes, asking Rich to see if maybe you can add that. I think it would be better added in the summary rather than in a finance committee letter. But do you think you can add that in the summary here?
Yeah, I can add some language regarding that doesn't represent the full cost of the operation at this point, but that's something that the finance committee will consider a full allocation of costs for the next year.
I'm really concerned. I want to go back to, there are separate issues. I would oppose putting these indirect costs in unless the town taxpayers continue to pay them. As it's set up now, only the water users are paying anything that's in the enterprise fund, at least once you get it balanced. So,
I guess what I would say to that.
So if you put the indirect stuff in, Jerry's point becomes even more important.
Well, I guess what I'd say to that is I'm a very big proponent, and I've been through this a handful of times with different towns, and lots of people do it differently. And to me, it's very simple. It's an enterprise fund, and we should identify and allocate all the costs that ought to be to the fund. But then the second part of it is you then have the decision of how do you want to fund it, and then that's where we can play around with, does the general fund subsidize or put some money over into it? And so I would suggest that we go through the process of how do we want to identify and have an indirect cost allocation, accept that, see what it looks like, and then we could have the discussion of how much of that do we want the taxpayers to pay versus the ratepayers.
Was there a change in the rate between 21 and 22?
No.
So it's just a coincidence, really, that the thing balances this year.
We anticipate having sufficient revenues to make it balanced, right?
But next year, if nothing else changes, next year with more ratepayers, it's gonna have a surplus.
That would be right. I would assume so. Assuming consumption is the same and all that.
Right. So there's not. I mean, the question goes back to how is the rates set, and how often do you adjust the rates based on how many users and what the cost profile is, and then what is the cost profile? What do you include? What don't you?
And that's exactly where this is going, why it's an appropriate time to talk, to have this, in the upcoming several months, because we'll get to a point where we need to determine a correct operating rate, and if we want to have any additional amount on top of that rate for ongoing capital maintenance, or do you want that to come from the tax rate, or how do you want to approach that? So the rate setting process is important, which is why I'm a big advocate for having all the costs identified and allocated. Then you have the discussion of the funding.
Yeah, so I think it's an evolutionary process, and I think we ought to approve this as it's written and spend some time on the evolution as it happens.
Boy, I'm really upset about this discussion.
Steve, can you explain it a little bit?
I'll try. So yeah, I think Rich and Rick have both brought important points up. There's a evolution of rate setting, and there's a proper identification of indirect costs that should be reflected. Those are important discussions, but I'd be extremely concerned that we will move items that are currently being paid by taxpayers because they're in the department budgets, moving them to the enterprise fund without accepting Jerry's principle that the taxpayers ought to pay for town services or services to the town. And I think we need to be, now it may be some of these indirect costs are properly allocated to the water users and some are not, I don't know. But I think we need to be careful to distinguish between Rich's point and Rick's point of what's the best way to account for the actual cost, and then how do you pay for it. But I wouldn't want the how do you pay for it discussion to get lost in the complicated accounting discussion about how to account for all the costs.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
And I'm out of my pay grade now, so I really better shut up.
Should have added, Steve, that in that process, you also would account for back charges, things that go the other way. So that would accommodate Jerry's concern as well, going through that process.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
Rick,
think we could avoid it this year.
I agree
Yeah.
with Steve.
I think we can avoid it this
I
year.
agree with Steve that how we handle some of these indirect costs, we got to be careful there. But from what I heard, there are also direct costs that are not included in these numbers. So I think we've got to look at both the indirect and the direct that are not included here.
Yeah. I'm glad I brought it up. I'm satisfied for fiscal year 2022 that Article 2B is fine. We're not setting a precedent. We're going to have some really great discussions, I imagine, if I get reappointed, but we'll have some really great discussions next year on this. I'm a firm believer in the Water Enterprise Fund, and we're just starting, and let's get it set. Anybody have any other comments or anything on Article 2 Bravo? Okay, do I hear a motion to
God,
approve?
everybody's silent. I'll move again, but I'm trying not to be the sole mover on the
Be the
water.
mover.
We're gonna.
But I'm happy to do it.
We're gonna appoint you the official mover, Steve. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Faster if we have an official mover.
Actually, we could do that, but go on.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Russ, I
That was
thought
Russ,
Russ seconded.
okay. Sorry, didn't hear that. Any other discussions? Okay, we'll start with Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry will vote yes. You got rid of my negative vote there, Rich. That's good. We'll move now on to Article 3 Alpha, the 5-year capital plan, which is included in, hold on, the next pages. And I'm trying to figure out how, in the past, I look back and I don't think we voted on each specific item in the capital plan, thank goodness. We did basically the entire process with one motion, one vote. Does anyone have any questions, comments, negative stuff, questions for Rich on anything on the capital plan? First question, Rich, any changes in this article?
No changes.
I do have a question, and so does Peter.
Okay, Peter, we'll go with Peter first.
Yeah, Rich, you probably explained this when we went through this, but the senior center renovation replacement, there's nothing in that for the whole plan. Is it somewhere else, or that's on the radar, right?
It is on the radar. It wasn't on the 5-year radar, I guess, but in my detail that I sent out to you, it's in. I had the next 5 years, and then I had a thereafter column, and I had it in the thereafter column.
Thereafter.
Steve?
Thank you, Jerry. Rich, maybe we discussed this when we went over the capital budget. Forgive me if I just forget. But last year's approved capital plan had anticipated $1 million for wastewater planning. We've now pushed it out. And so there's 100,000 this year. We don't get to this, the big amount until fiscal year 24. Is that right? I mean, we figure even in 23, we're still going to have a little greater, but still a modest expenditure. Is that? where we're
Yeah,
at?
just because, and Jackie just logged in, so maybe she has some comments, but we've got some work to do as far as finalizing the work that's underway, and that's wrapping up. And then, you know, we got to actually develop what that plan's going to look like and flesh that out, which would include, you know, what are we actually going to do versus how we're going to fund it. And we have several funding sources available to us. So, you know, that's probably going to be through next year.
And then
it's
we'll
also,
we'll be ready in 24.
So there's also, you know, a couple parts to this. The one part being, you know, south end of town, what are the needs there? Because those are the watersheds that are contributing to the estuaries versus what we might want to do in Northeast Tam, which is kind of tied in with the tea time parcel, which doesn't contribute to estuary pollution, but has perhaps a wastewater need for economic development purposes.
All right, that makes sense. Okay, I got it.
So right now, Steve, we're just receiving the first few chapters of the draft comprehensive wastewater management plan that's evolving. Once we get that into a final draft, then it has to go through permitting before it can be approved by DEP. So that's at least a year before we could even possibly get on the SRF list for funding. So I think we are looking at a few smaller appropriations before we get to any big dollars.
Okay.
I will just tell you that I was at the Cape and Islands Water Protection Management Board meeting today, and we did vote to give the first subsidies to towns doing wastewater. So that was pretty exciting. And the subsidy is now at 25% for projects over $1 million. So that's a pretty damn good subsidy if we can keep it up.
Wow. Yeah. Excellent.
In the new, we're also working with the county, this is just an aside. Town gets about $500,000 under the American Rescue Plan funds that are coming. We can use that for wastewater projects as infrastructure. Probably won't because we're not quite ready. But the county has received double the amount for all the towns on the Cape. They got something like $44 million. And we're talking to some folks up at the county through the county Cape Cod Commission about making those funds available for wastewater, as well as what might end up coming out of we'll see what happens with an upcoming infrastructure bill. And if any of those things come to fruition, we might have some opportunities to really reduce our contribution.
Wonderful. Any other comments or questions going forth on Article 3? Is it Bravo or no? 3 Alpha?
Alpha.
3 Alpha?
I'd like to go back to that senior center question. Should it be on here? Is there any advantage to having it on? Because obviously, I know it's high on Silvio's list and everyone's really, that it needs serious attention. I see that the maintenance is on at a pretty hefty amount, but just wondering if the renovation replacement should be on this one.
Yeah, so you're right, the maintenance is on there. But no, we didn't anticipate it occurring within the next 5 years, so it's not on the 5-year plan. And that might also have something to do with the ultimate use of tea time.
Tea time.
Yeah, I know.
We're actually not talking about replacing the senior center at all. We're leaning towards a community center model. So I think we'll have a better idea on that within the next year or so. And then we can place it on the capital plan where it where it should be.
Right, right,
Right now, it's simply a placeholder to make sure we don't forget it.
sure. Yeah, I was actually thinking of it, the tea time, if it ends up over there, but then it wouldn't be on this, it wouldn't be accurate to call it a renovation or a replacement, because it'll be in a different location.
Right, but again, that's why we have a 5-year plan. So we know that we need to do something with that building. So it's a placeholder now, and then we'll define what that something is, right? And
You know, you might use it for some other use.
exactly.
Right.
All right. So, no more discussion. So do I hear a motion on 3 alpha?
I will make a motion on 3 alpha, positive.
Russ, you're taking over Steve's job here.
I'll take over Russ's. I'll second it.
Tom will second. Okay.
Steve has been grumbling so
He's getting tired.
Yeah, yeah.
What a
thank
friend,
you.
what a friend.
Thank you, guys. Do we have any more comments or discussion on this? Okay, we'll go to a vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes,
Peter,
Yes,
Tom,
Yes.
George. George, I don't know.
We lost.
We lost George? All right, we'll go. We got enough votes. So Rick
Yes.
and Jerry is George really gone? Yeah, George is somehow missing. So the vote is 7-0 because Jerry will vote, I'll vote yes. I want to take 1 minute to say hello to Jackie. Glad you could join us, and to introduce Jackie to Roy Maroli. Now, Roy Maroli. Yeah, I'm trying to roll the R and I got mixed up.
You got it.
Hi, Roy. It's nice to meet you. I've spoken to your wife quite a few times, so.
Yes, I know.
So,
George is back.
oh, George, you want to vote on Article 3A?
you're muted.
Did you vote on 3B? I lost the connection for a few minutes.
Yeah, no, we're on 3A, 3 alpha, the 5-year capital plan. So your votes?
Yes,
Okay, 8-0. Thank you. Glad you made it. Jackie, just to let you know, we voted to appoint Roy. He's got to jump through a few hoops, go to take his ethics course, and then go see Cindy to get sworn in, Cindy or Linda to get sworn in, and so forth. All right, now we'll go to Article 3 Bravo, 3B, the capital budget. Let's see if we'll raise and appropriate $1,576,500. First, Rich, any amendments or changes to the capital budget?
There have been no changes from what you previously were presented, but I guess I'll just point out, just to reinforce and remind you, the Rock Harbor response boat that we had talked about on several occasions as a capital exclusion is now funded from a combination of free cash and available tax levy.
Okay.
And therefore, that is in here as one of the line items of this budget.
I see that. All right. Any discussion, any comments or anything on this article? Stephen?
Rich, I have one question. In the summary of funding sources, tax levy sources are $477,500. The article that was passed after much discussion at the last town meeting was for $400,000, the override so we have a continuing pool of tax levy money for capital needs. Where does the other 77 come from?
So the first pass, obviously we crafted this to include at least the 400,000. I think we came in around 410 or so, 415 maybe. But then when we got to the end of the process with the savings we had on some of the operating budget items, we had additional levy, and that's what I contributed to the Rock Harbor Response Boat, which brings it up to the 477.
So it's this year's tax levy that's funding this particular capital expense.
And free cash.
Partially funded.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Peter,
Yeah, and the second section, municipal buildings and facilities, the second item, energy efficiency and solar PV project. Could, I don't know, what's the solar PV project part of it?
It's there to give it the opportunity if that was to present itself, but it's really for energy efficiency projects. We started a process in I think 21 was the first year where we raised money for that.
Yep.
To do energy efficiency projects, and we're just continuing that. We do anticipate being a green community, which would give us about $180,000 of a designation award to do energy efficiency projects. But it's helpful to have some of your own money to do some matching and to take advantage of other subsidies that are available. So likely would go towards that.
Thank you.
any other questions, comments? Okay, well, do I have a motion on Article 3 Bravo?
This is like a game of chicken. Whether Tom,
No, Tom,
Yeah.
Tom's got his hand up, okay.
Tom?
Do I hear a you guys are great. Do I hear a second?
Second.
okay.
Is that,
Who's that?
is that Tom and Russ?
Tom and Russ.
Tom
Good.
and Russ. All right. Switching positions this time. Any other discussion on Article 3 Bravo? Okay, we'll start with Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes?
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
and Rick.
Yes.
And Jerry votes yes as well.
8-0.
8-0. 3, Charlie, the lease purchase for the ambulance. See if we will, sum of 118,000 from the ambulance fund. We had a significant discussion on this with the fire chief. Does anybody have any further comments or anything on this?
Jerry, I just want to make a mention that we need 2/3 majority vote for this.
That's not for us.
I realize it's not for us. I'm just saying that when we get to the
To the
to the
town,
town meeting.
right. No comments, do I hear a motion?
I make the motion that we approve Article 3C.
Do we have a second?
Second.
That was George. Spreading the wealth today. Any other further discussion? We'll go to a vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes?
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes. So that's another 8-0. Thank you guys for knowing the list. That's doing great. Article 3D Delta, the lease purchase of the Quint fire truck. To lease it, $114,766 taken out of the ambulance fund. Any changes to this one, Rich?
No changes.
No changes, okay. Any comments or questions on Article 3 Delta? All right, do I hear a motion?
I'll move it.
Russ?
Okay,
A second.
and Rick was a second. Any further discussion? None, go to a vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes, 8-0. Going to Article 4, free cash appropriations. Any changes here, Rich?
Yes, there are two changes. The fund, private road repair fund, needs
Yeah.
to be $100,000. We anticipate, the main road that we are considering right now is Toland Drive. And, to the extent that that has, occurs, this money is basically to seed that project, but a lot of it would be covered by the betterments from the homeowners. But we need to have,
Would you say the name of that road again, please?
It's Thoreau.
oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Thoreau.
Drive.
Row, I
Thoreau.
thought, that, yeah.
But we need the seed money to start the construction and hire the contractor, and then we recover it through a betterment process. And then the second change is a new line item, which is called, oh, darn it. It's called Beach and Recreation Enforcement for $25,000. And you may have seen the lively and effusive discussion at the last select board meeting on Great Pond water skiing. And so this money would be towards seasonal help and some equipment, cameras, et cetera, to help with enforcement.
For Great Pond?
Okay.
Rich, for Great Pond?
Could be for just Great Pond, but I left it a little loose in case there was some additional enforcement that they wanted to undertake along the same lines of the discussion they were having. It might be an opportunity with the whole no wake zone in the estuary that they might want to do a little extra work as well.
How many dollars did you?
Oh,
25.
I'm sorry, 25,000.
25,000. All right.
So the total is now what?
1,230,000.
280, right?
280?
50, you had it 50, right? Yep, 230.
Okay.
Wait a second.
Wait a minute, 1,180,000.
1,230,000.
How do you get, you're adding 20, it's only 25,000 to 1,155.
No, and there was
No, you're adding
50,000.
Another 50.
I'm sorry?
Another
75.
75,000.
Oh, it's not, I thought Rich said 25.
No, there was 50,000 earlier, Mary, for the private road repair.
No, we're talking about the beach and recreation.
No, he's talking about the total now. That's
Yeah.
the total of all of them.
Oh, so it's 125 more,
No,
75 more.
75 more,
Yeah.
75 more.
Right.
So to get the,
So it's 1,230.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, any further discussion? I'm going to just raise an issue on the private road repair fund for a, and I probably will vote yes on this, but raise it on Article 9 Alpha. I think that we need a comprehensive review of private roads in Eastham and how we deal with them and what we do. Since there is no difference from what I understand in assessments for houses on either a private road or a public way. And I just think we need to review. What we're doing here is getting seed money to repair a road. And then you're going to get a betterment. So you're going to increase the taxes of the individuals living on that road, which I understand. We have private roads with no, that were accepted by the town with no mechanism, no homeowners association, no anything set up to cover repairs of roads and so forth. We also have the issue with private roads creating private utilities. We have another article looking at that. So I think we should have an entire review of private roads. And I'm not certain that I'm a person, now look, I'm going to, full disclosure, I live on a private road. And I'm not sure that a cul-de-sac that is a public way that the town takes care of, whereas my road, I have to pay for it. And there's no a difference in taxes or assessment. There's nothing on it. So I think that we just need a total discussion on it. I'm just concerned about disparate treatment of taxpayers, and I think we should discuss it. I'm not necessarily going to vote. I don't think I'm going to vote no on Article 4, but I think that in the future, maybe this is the way we go, but we need to have a thorough discussion if this is the way we want to go.
Jerry?
Yes, Jackie.
So this issue is governed by state statute. It is not a town issue, okay? So every single town across Massachusetts has the same system of assessing roads, the same private and public. Some public roads are actually, properties on private roads are worth more because they're private roads and they're not traversed as much and they're more private, which is why a lot of private road owners want to keep a private road. So the town has a mechanism if a road that meets our standard wants to become a public road. And it's a very clear process that a road has to go through, and we can tweak that bylaw, but basically we have that process. This is a different process because we have a lot of private road owners who want our assistance, not because they can't afford to pay for the road repairs, but because they don't know how to go about doing that, and the town does. We have a civil engineer on staff. We can do those sorts of things. And so we are creating a mechanism by which a private road owner, last year we created the mechanism whereby we could do some repairs on private roads if the road voted to do that and assess a betterment. So we voted for that last year. This year, we are faced with almost a crisis because we have 65 roads across Eastham that have private utilities on them. Some are public, some are private. We have no mechanism to help residents on those private roads except, do this huge infrastructure repair. Like, who would know how to replace an underground utility that serves 25 houses on a road? Like, I can't imagine dealing with that as a private property owner with 19 of my neighbors, half of which don't live here year round, right? So we're asking for special legislation to try and be of assistance in those situations so that we can help one at a time those 65 roads get their utilities up to snuff and turned over to Eversource so that those people will never have to deal with it again.
Right.
Eversource, there is legislation in front of the state legislature to try and force Eversource to pay for those upgrades, and I would encourage you to support that. And then lastly, and then I will shut up, and when we started the water project in 2014, we spent $126,000 on a full assessment of every road in Eastham. So we have that data. It is GPSed. We can tell you the depth, the condition, everything about the road as of 5 years ago. So it hasn't changed that much as we've touched the road and put water in. We've done the overlays and different things, but it hasn't changed that much. So we know exactly how many roads, and it would be really, I can't imagine the cost if we took 2/3 of the town roads that are private now, some of which are 9 feet wide, and took them as public roads and had to maintain them. I mean, that's,
Yep.
the
I understand.
cost alone would be staggering.
Yeah, listen, Jackie, I fully understand that, and that's why I thought a discussion, and I'm aware of the utilities, and I think what the article you have on utilities is wonderful. I'm on a private road. On a Friday, the electricity went out for 62 homes. Eversource came up, no, it's not our problem, it's underneath here, and they left. So for an entire weekend, 62 homes in October had no electricity. Fortunately, it didn't go below 32. We went out, a couple of us went out and we got a contractor to come in and fix it, repaired it, sent a bill to all 62 homes, and 8 of them haven't paid. And the electrical contractor is going to small claims court. So what you offered in that one is excellent. This here, looking at private roads, I just think we need to, and I understand the expense, and I just think we need a discussion on it. And I just wanted to raise it here because I'll probably raise it later. But the electrical one, I understand. I've lived it and I've paid it, so I understand. So thanks.
And I think, honestly, if you want to talk about taking private roads over as public roads, that would be a great petitioned article, and we could easily probably come up with what that would cost annually to the town to do.
Yeah, I'll work.
But
We'll work
I
on
would
that.
suggest to you that you will have great opposition to that, because there are many private road owners that do not want to live on a town road. And that's why they bought their property on a private road.
I'm just gonna say Hay Road now, and then let's remember, okay, I mean,
Hey,
God help us.
we don't need another 40-year opportunity.
Actually, I think it was only 22 years for Hay Road, but something.
Seems like 40 to me.
Okay. I'm sorry I did it. Did anybody have any comments on Article 4?
I have a small question.
Steve, and then Mary.
Rich, or Jackie, would it be our intention in future years to take this in rec enforcement and put it in the operating budget? It seems different than the other kind of items that are in our.
Yeah, if it were to be a recurring cost, we would add it into the operating budget and try to fit it in with the levy. But wasn't sure that that's going to be the case, so.
Yeah, so if that is the case, that's the kind of item you would probably do that.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's sort of a test case with Great Pond, but I think Rich's idea of making it more general is great, because then, you know, as the boating bylaw goes into effect, if we have problems in different areas, we can, you know, move that around. And then absolutely, if it works and we like it and the select board wants to continue it, then we'll build it in next year.
Thank you.
Great. Mary, you had a question, Mary?
Yes, I did. First, I have a question for Jackie. Jackie, does everybody that live on a private road where it's public, private utilities, do they all know this?
No, they
No.
don't. And we've
No.
been, Silvio and I have been working with Eversource now for almost, I would say, since last August, since Thoreau Drive, because that was the most dramatic one. Before that, we had gotten like telephone poles that had gone out, you know, minor things. So we asked Eversource to do a search, and now because they're required to notify, so they're going to be sending out letters to all these 65 roads. And, you know, for me, it's a moral obligation. I mean, we have to figure out a way to assist residents who purchased homes not knowing that this was happening, to figure it out. And this is a way to do it at very little cost to us. I mean, it doesn't, obviously we will collect betterments, but that person doesn't have to come up with $6,000 in one fell swoop. They can pay, you know, over 10 years or 20 years or whatever. So I think it will be a tool that will be very helpful to those road owners. And that's why we wanted to get it on this town meeting.
And my other question isn't to Jackie, it's more to Rich. On the stabilization fund, Number one, I think it's terrific that we're putting in the 780,000. And I know from prior conversations, Rich, you have said that from a bond perspective, 15% or even I think this article says 16% of the budget is something that we should be aiming for. And at one point, I thought you said that we had 15%. We had 14%. So does that mean that with the 780 in here added to what we had before, that we're up to over $4 million? That's 14% of our budget.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, we
can't
were
be
just
right.
under, with this contribution, they'll put us right around the 14%. I can now that things have changed, I should, rerun that and get the exact amount percentage.
Does that mean we're
it's
over $4
14.
million?
Mary, it's 14% less the debt.
Oh, okay. I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
14% less the debt.
Well, we don't add the exempt debt because that's not forever. It's only for the life of the debt. We don't add that into our calculation.
Okay.
I can get out something further, just so you all have it, going to town meeting, you'll have a good understanding of that and the levels that we are at.
Yeah.
The idea would be that we were, take another bite at the apple again for this upcoming year, because we're expecting another good free cash certification from money that has been earned from, for example, short-term rentals and hasn't been dedicated to the intended uses yet.
Right.
And so we don't want to just have that fall away. And so that we'll, come up with a allocation to the various reserves with that money.
Okay, I'd appreciate that. And I have a question on the OPEB, the next item, where we're putting in 200,000. Do you know what our current liability is?
Yeah, again, I could set out an update on that. Top of my head, I don't. It's north of the $30 million amount, though. It's,
Are we, at some point, are we going to, I think you've mentioned, have a discussion about all of this regarding perhaps level funding of some sort? Or I'm not sure what you had in mind.
Yeah, well, it's whatever you guys want to have in mind, but I would certainly think we ought to have a discussion on it because it's a topic that keeps coming up, not just here, but everywhere. But usually the approach is we do have actuarially determined contributions on an annual basis, what those ought to be. And so we're not at that level. So if you're not at that level, usually the first step is what do we need to do to get to that level? And so that's step one. And then, do you want to do anything above and beyond that would be, an additional step. So there's some strategies that we could follow on that. And some are short-term, some are long-term. For example, we have a similar funding schedule and actuary reports that are issued every other year on our pension obligation. And so based on that, we are anticipating by the year 2036 that our pension will be fully funded. And so, since this is such a long-term liability, a lot of the approach is what can we do on the interim basis and a short-term basis with an idea that once the pension obligation is knocked out, that you shift the funding that's been going to that to the OPEB to make up any differences that you couldn't achieve in a nearer term. So there's a lot of discussion on how you want to approach that we could be having.
Okay, and the other thing is,
Mary, before we move on to that, I just wanted to let you know that the recommendation that we made to the select board that they accepted was that we would prioritize the stabilization fund. Once we get to the appropriate level of the stabilization fund,
then deal with
then
OPEB.
we'll start putting extra into OPEB and capital, the third. So
Okay.
those were the three items.
Yep, so the stabilization fund was on top.
Yep.
Yeah. And at one point, Rich, you said that you would meet with the Board of Finance to discuss investment options for the stabilization fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, and matter of fact, I'm hoping to start with the library trustees first.
I know.
Because you have a good amount of your own funds. And
That's
so what
correct.
that discussion would do would probably likely utilize the same investment manager if we were to go down that road to look at some sort of short-term investment of stabilization funds.
Okay, I'd like that to be on our agenda sometime, Jerry.
Okay,
Thanks, Rich.
any other comments, questions on Article 4? Do I hear a motion?
One
Oh.
last one on the private road,
Peter.
one last one on the private road repairs. So is that primarily for utilities? I mean, it's not for fixing potholes, right?
We did the fixing potholes last year.
Right.
And so when I talked to town council, I asked if we could use it to do utilities and they said no. So we need a special act of the legislature. So that's why it's on as to add utilities to it. And then it has to go to the legislature.
Thanks.
Okay. Do I hear a motion on Article 4?
So moved.
That was Rick. We hear a second?
That was George. I'll second though.
Oh, Joe, the other way around. It was George. Yeah, that's all right.
They sound alike.
Yeah, well, sort of, especially when you got hearing aids.
So that was George and then Rick, Jerry?
Yes.
Yeah, it was George and then Rick.
Okay.
Rick was the second. Any further discussion? We'll go to a vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes. 8-0. Okay, we move on to Article 5. Adopting an injury leave indemnity fund to and appropriate $70,000 from free cash to begin that fund. Now, any changes to that, Rick? Rich, I mean,
No, no change.
okay. Any questions or comments?
Are we making any appropriation yet to the fund or just setting it up?
No, there is an appropriation of
70,000
$70,000.
from free cash.
2,000.
That was,
1,000 from free cash.
Yeah. So, a question, Rich, on this, this becomes a fund, which is basically designated.
oh, I see. Thank you.
Yeah, designated fund. Will it become an operating budget item with money transferred there, or will it stay in the future as a separate appropriation to the fund in future years?
So this initial seed money kind of starts the fund and gives it some standing. Then what would have to happen is we'd have to adopt a policy of how we want to utilize the fund. And usually what happens is it's used to cover long-term disabilities and public safety. So, the day-to-day, somebody's got to be out for a shift or two, that they should be able to handle that in the budget. But if you've got somebody that's out, over 90 days, let's say, that, who knows if that's the right cutoff or not. But you'd utilize that fund to fund those costs on a long-term disability or a long-term issue. This starts the fund, and the idea is that we'd try to build into the police and fire department budgets an appropriate amount on an annual basis, almost like being self-insured, where you always putting an amount into the fund so that if you need it in the future, you've got it and you're budgeting for it on an ongoing basis. And so you eliminate the highs and lows that you experience with somebody that's out on a long-term disability.
Right. Thank you. Tom?
And Rich, it was my understanding that the creation of this fund and using this for those long-term injuries, where today, those are predominantly funded using overtime by the departments. Instead, they'd be able to tap into this fund, right, to pay those in effect with time and start paving the way for us to try to save some money in overtime. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know that will necessarily save money because you have the cost one way or the other. But it does raise attention to those cases, what might help us resolve them more quickly or make a determination to we have somebody retire on disability as opposed to staying on staff. But basically, they take a hit in their operating budget, which curtails their operations because they don't have the funding. They got to, fill their shifts and pay for the person that's injured, all out of the operating budget.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we support this, Article 5,
Recommend
recommended.
it.
It's Tom?
Tom, and do we have a second?
Second.
Russ. All right, any other comments? Discussion? We'll go to vote. Steve?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
And Jerry's a yes, 8-0. Okay, Article 6, Gold Star exemption. Right now, I think we have one. It's $400 off your assessment or tax exemption, excuse me. And now they want to make it, we have the ability to make it a 100% exemption, and that's what this does based on the Massachusetts law. For surviving parents, and there are some particulars in here about how long you have to have lived here, etc. The only question I have to ask is, how many? Do we have many? I mean, right, currently, just current, we don't know what the future holds. Currently, are there many residences that are currently take advantage of the Gold Star exemption?
As I understand it, Jerry, that we have one resident currently in town that could take advantage of this. And, it's a moderately priced home, so in the $4,000 range of value of tax. So if we were to abate that, obviously we don't get that revenue, and it goes against our abatements and exemptions account, which we have to provide for when we set our tax rate, which is currently around 175,000, I think it is.
Okay. That was the question. I'm not just how much. Hopefully, we never have to have this. I mean, you don't want to have anyone lose a child. Anyway, do we have any other questions on Article 6? Mary?
Rich, when was this general law adopted? Just how old is this law?
I'm not sure, Mary. I could go back and let you know, but I think it is relatively, there's been several changes in recent years, and I believe this is one of them. So I think it is a relatively new provision.
Okay.
Yeah, in the article, it says that the exemption shall only apply to tax years beginning on or after January 1, 2019.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw
So
that.
it can't be too old. Do I hear a motion on Article 6? Oh,
Can I ask a question?
yes, Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Is there anything locally or in the state that provides a comparable benefit if a deceased service member left a spouse and children or children? This only applies to parents. Is there anything, I don't even know if in this case it has any applicability, what I'm asking, but if it would happen in the future.
I think this provision is very specific, and so what you're asking, I think the answer is just no. There is no additional provision in state law.
We do have exemptions for veterans, disabled veterans at different levels, so. But I don't know what happens.
You're saying we're using the state law. It seems a little bizarre though to me, to be honest with you.
Well, I think that's, maybe Jackie's right. I think this is a provision of state law that got added because of parents couldn't take advantage of a exemption. But on the other issue, spouses and disabled or veterans could. And so this was a way of extending that benefit.
Are you saying spouses of a deceased service member can get exemption from real property taxes?
Yeah, I think that's an existing exemption that already exists that we process.
Oh, okay, that's great. I was just curious. That's the answer. It's already done, is what you're saying. Okay.
It's an assessing, I'll have to go back and check with our assessing staff though, but I can get that to you. I think that's the answer.
Okay, any other comments or questions on Article 6? We can go to a motion.
And I make the motion that Article 6 be approved.
And do I have a second?
Second.
That's Russ.
That was Russ. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I wish I could just go all in favor, but here we go. Voting, Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is also a yes for an 8-0 vote. Roy, you can see how exciting our meetings are, Roy.
I just want to get in line for free cash.
You know, I think we all do, but we haven't figured it out yet. Maybe the professor will. Okay.
Hey, Roy, it comes right after the free lunch.
That's an interesting
Actually-
term you use.
Actually, pre-pandemic, this was a free dinner meeting.
That's right.
No, I
Jackie used
missed
to
that.
provide food for us,
Yeah.
but we don't have that anymore. Anyway, we'll see what happens later. Article 7, authorizing the sale of 0 Nauset Light Beach Road. This is, I think, required to work with the Park Service, if my memory is correct on this, but I will ask Jackie, would you explain this just a little bit?
Sure. Am I on mute? So.
No, you're not. You're good.
So basically, I was approached by a property owner this summer who owns a parcel of land on Nauset Light Beach Road that is right on the coastal bluff, right? And there are several town-owned parcels behind his parcel. And so he asked if the select board would consider selling him the parcel directly behind his house so that when he needed to, he would have room to move the house back landward. And the select board agreed. And so this is the article that needs to go on town meeting warrant to complete that sale.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Excuse me a
I have a
second.
question. Jackie,
Mary.
what are they paying for this land?
So it's a very tiny piece, but it adds enough to the parcel that he has to move it back. And I don't remember the exact amount, but what the town basically did was we charged for the assessed value of the piece of land plus all the legal fees and everything that went along with it. And it puts it on the tax rolls,
I was
which is,
just gonna say, it'll be added to the tax rolls.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Do I hear a motion on Article 7?
I'll make the motion.
Russ. Okay. Second?
Second.
Second.
Who was second? George or
Rick?
Rick?
Rick was a second.
Rick, okay.
Any further comments or discussion? Okay, vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry is a yes as well, 8-0. Article 8, authorizing the increase in short-term rental tax. Now, this has got, what we have in our copy here is not
Complete.
complete. There's some things that have to be added. Has that been done? Or should I delay this to a later meeting once we get that
Well, the
finished?
addition, the only addition would be the date of the original vote, which I'm not sure is actually needed, but in any event, we got it. It's originally voted at Article 17 of the September 29th, 1986 special town meeting, which established an excise of 4% on room excise rentals, room rentals.
1986, huh?
Yeah,
September 29.
correct.
Does the authority to go up to 6 apply to the motel side also, not just to the,
Yeah, so what's changed
New
since
short-term
1986 is that excises have expanded from hotels and motels to include, short-term rentals for private residents. So we're talking about the same thing. So this would apply to hotel, motel, and private short-term rentals.
so when the legislature expanded it and allowed us to go up to 6, that applied to the whole,
Yeah, well, the 6 has always applied, but what's expanded was the rooms that were counted.
right, okay.
Okay, anyone take effect on January 1st, 2022? Okay. Anyone, anybody have further question? Mary, I think, see your hand.
Yeah. Rich, what additional amount does this, based on what the information that we have, give us from 4 to 6?
Yeah, so the select board had a discussion on this topic and wants to provide for some sort of community support program. This is kind of a follow-on of the residential tax exemption discussion. So in lieu of a residential tax exemption, they want to try to do something, and they thought this was perhaps something that they could do to provide funding for that ultimate discussion of what they'd like to do. And we're anticipating about $300,000 based on the FY20 collections.
Mhm.
And they kind of, for us, they're focusing a lot of their energy on helping residents be able to purchase homes. So it may be a program by which we loan people down payment funds and then they pay it back over time. Stuff, issues like that. Maybe people who qualify for a mortgage but don't have the cash down payment to purchase a house over $400,000, which is where we are now.
Right. Steve?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about this article. I first have a question, though, before I go into concerns. Is it possible, Jackie and Rich, that the select board will be fleshing out some more the anticipated uses of the increased revenue before the town meeting and before the warrants printed? Or is it still something up in the air?
It's still something up in the air, and Rich and I are trying to use all of our creative and technical talents to find the right thing, and there really isn't a lot of precedent for this. We're really kind of on our own. Other towns are struggling with it too, and we're trying to be creative, but we're not going to be ready to have anything totally unveiled by June, and we told the board that. However, what we learned was that Orleans is already at 6%, and Wellfleet, Provincetown is already at 6%, and Wellfleet and, is it Truro?
Yep.
All the other towns around us are going to 6%. So the select board felt like we should go to 6% and start collecting the money with the knowledge that we will, like we have the other short-term rentals, set it aside for something specific. And it will be related to some kind of housing and community support programs.
The other aspect of that, I just added on to what Jackie said is, we can be pretty creative and, I think we're probably gonna, of all the towns around, I mean, other towns have good ideas too, but I think we might blaze a little bit of a trail here, which would include special legislation, which is, another reason why I won't be ready. And they get, also, Mary, it goes back to the discussion that we want to have with the trustees on investment management of trust funds and donations and contributions. So there's a wide-ranging area here, all of which requires some special legislation, which will take us a year or two to get in place. There'll be things we can do before that without the legislation, but the longer-term solution, would require some sort of legislation to do that.
Well, I'm leaning towards a no vote on this for a lot of reasons. One is I think we should be very reluctant to increase or impose a tax without some greater clarity about what the new money is for. And this is in the context of the short-term rental tax essentially has been over 12% just recently adopted because of the wastewater fund, because of the state levy, because of the town levy, and that would be adding on to that. I'm not opposed to that in principle, but I'm concerned that we don't know what the uses will be. And I think that's a hard ask for the town meeting. I'm also concerned more to the merits than the process, in that I think the things we've identified so far are not as important as a very urgent need we have to support affordable housing. And I don't think it's helping people with down payments. I think the issue for our town, that's an issue, but I think the issue of rental housing, even with the new Nauset Green, is as urgent for our town as it is anywhere in the state. So I would rather see, and I want to disclose, I'm on the board of Community Development Partnership, which has been advocating that to the towns in the Outer Cape, that they designate some or all of the short-term rental tax to supporting affordable housing or workforce housing, especially workforce housing where there may not be state and federal subsidies available because it's over 80%. And I think we should do that and consider partnering with developers who might not otherwise be able to accommodate new affordable housing. So I think that's where this should be going. I'm not stuck in that if there was something else that the select board came up with they thought was more important. But right now we're saying we don't really know, we just want to do good, which I tend to usually vote for. So unless there's more information and more explanation of what we're doing, I'm going to vote no.
I do disagree with you, Steve. I think that the select board feels very strongly that this money, this additional revenue should be used for housing and not for affordable housing with a capital A, but for workforce housing and for people that are already living here and struggling to stay. And they have a priority to keep families and children here. And that is part of what they believe is their strategic plan. And they want to do that by assisting them to purchase homes. We already have rental subsidies for families that affordable housing, the trust has. We already have many programs that assist families to pay rent. We don't have anything that assists families to buy a home.
Well, there's almost nothing in the town to rent. I mean, to really change the situation. The housing plan, production plan makes rental housing a real priority. And I think it's building we're talking about. But there could be a difference of opinion. We both, the select board and I, are clearly in agreement that housing is a critical issue. I just think the direction they're going is wrong. I'm also very concerned that we're proposing an increase from 4 to 6%, but we're not looking at the community impact fee, which is an authority to levy 3% on those who are renting more than one home in the town. And part of the reason that the stock of rental housing is not what it needs to be is because of commercial entities coming over in and buying homes and then putting it on the short-term market.
Give me that stuff there.
And it would seem to me it would be a good idea. It wouldn't solve the problem, but to at least levy the tax on those commercial interests.
Rich, can we do the 3% without going up to the 6?
Yes. It's a separate levy. You
Or a
can do it-
combination.
Yep, and I think that's probably the approach that several towns are taking. They're maxing out to the 6% if they haven't already. And then they're looking at the larger issue with the commercial property, commercial interests generating rentals at homes and that are professionally managed. And so to your point, Steve, it would have to be at least 2, perhaps more units. And they'd have to meet the definition of what's called professionally managed. And that's kind of the difficulty that we have in identifying what those are. But we'd have to do that. And the State Bureau of Local Assessment is going to probably help us in doing that and how many of those there are in Eastham. But then that would be 3% on that smaller number. So if you have, 1,000 rental units, let's say, how many of those are more than 2 and how many of those are considered professionally managed? There'll be a much smaller subset of that 1,000, and then it would be 3% of that amount.
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, and I have to full disclosure, I'm an elected member of the Housing Authority. And I agree with you, Jackie, that the town needs, and I think Steve does too, the town needs emphasis on not affordable housing under the legal definition, where the Affordable Housing Trust is, or where the Housing Authority is, or where CPA funds go, but to look at people on the margin just above the eligibility for that. And I do think we need rentals. We need apartment rentals or something here in town for similar to what Nauset Green is, but Nauset Green is affordable housing. We need something for people that make a little bit more than those eligible at Nauset Green. And so I would hope that the select board would look at that, because it's really sad to see, and what's happening with prices on the land prices on the Cape right now is just unbelievable. I just don't know how people working here can afford to here, and I'm not sure buying or even potentially condos as opposed to private homes. So I don't know, Steve. I'm not sure I'm going to vote no here. But I'm with you on it that it would be nice to give a better explanation to the town. Of course, we don't have a summary here in what we've been given, Jackie. We don't have a summary, but a fairly detailed summary with some good explanation of where the thoughts are to use this, I think would be necessary. So at least we can have a basis as we look going forward, that the finance committee, hopefully the select board, and then the town can look. Yes, here's a project we want to work at. I mean, I would be in favor of, here's a developer who wants to put in some housing. Here's some stuff to help. Here it goes, and to help them build, to help people pay, even help people pay market rents, and they're above the affordable housing level income. I just think Eastham probably needs that. I mean, everything I read recently, I mean, the Cape, we're supposed to be just swamped with visitors this summer, and nobody's going to have anybody be able to work at places, and they can't find housing for them. So I think that we really need.
So how would we take $300,000 and give it to a developer to develop anything? That's what I'm saying.
But yeah, I agree. Well, you take
it would be
300.
10 years before we would be able to put that to use with a developer.
Yeah, that may be the case, and but if we use them for something else, for other things, you're not going to get the big bang. I think we have to look longer term rather than short steps, maybe a longer step. But that's just my opinion on this, and I'll support this raising to 6%, but I do think that we need to look at things, even though it's a small amount, in a longer stretch here.
Perhaps you and Steve or whoever is interested could let the select board know of your concerns, because, you know, right now we have the opportunity to change this article. We won't in another, few weeks. So I think if you would like to communicate with the board, that would probably be a very, worthwhile thing to do at this point.
That's very helpful suggestion.
Yeah, that's good, because
I'll
Art
take you up on that, Jackie.
Art can't be here, so we don't have our liaison today, unfortunately.
Well,
Okay, any more?
and I would
Steve?
want to provide more information than a 1-minute statement at a finance committee meeting. So this is a good idea, Jackie. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Do I hear a motion on Article
You got
8?
Rick?
Oh,
I
Peter,
got a
Russ.
question. We're talking about Article 8, right?
Right.
Article 8, yes.
The Article 8 itself says nothing about rental housing, purchased housing, any of that, right?
Yeah, it says short-term, right there.
It only raises the money, Rick.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
you're
so,
only talking about me, Jackie.
I'm going to support this because if the towns around us are at 6%, I think we ought to be at 6%. And the way I view the question of how are we going to use this money, I always struggle with, we're going to increase a tax and we're going to figure out how to spend it.
Mhm.
Especially when we know that taxes in this town that people pay for are on an upward trajectory and are going to continue on an upward trajectory. This is not free money. Now, I think we definitely need to invest in the housing issue. Whether it's rentals, whether it's ownership, I don't know. But, I always struggle when we say, how are we going to spend it, as if it's free money. Because it's not free money, because there's a lot of incremental expenditures built into what we're doing that could suck this up easily. At the end of the day, I think we need to look at all the resources we have coming in and how we want to spend them. And I'm sure we need to spend more on the affordable housing question. I just always struggle with let's tie it to this tax increase as if that's free money. End of speech.
And Rick, I think, that is the discussion that Rich and I had with the select board, that, I think both of us don't want to leave this money on the table either. If the other towns are collecting it, we want it. And even if we can't dedicate it this year, maybe, there's something that freezes it for this year until we figure out what we want to. I totally get what you're saying, and that's exactly what we told them. It would be better to go to town meeting with a increase and a dedication of that fund to something. So we're with you in that respect. I do think we have to raise this money.
Peter.
Oh, yeah, Russ was first.
Oh, okay, Russ.
Yeah, I'm going to vote for this. Roy, for your information, I'm one of the people that will be paying money on this. This will cost my renters over $250 a week in additional cost. But I want to emphasize really strongly, Jackie, rental or low-cost housing is by far and away the most necessary thing in my estimation that this money should go to. And I will vote for it based on the fact I know you and Rich and the Board of Selectmen will do the right thing. But I have the same feeling that Rick has, is that, you know, the other towns are doing the 6%, but it's like, hey, you're just cutting it out because, hey, the people that are renting here will pay it, and let's get it in and spend it for something. Let's make sure we do it for housing.
Well, that's what I was gonna suggest, Jerry. Can we put it in the article, or can the article be rewritten to say that if the money's gonna be used for set aside or whatever for affordable housing purposes? Or possibly even give it to the Affordable Housing Trust, which is sort of managing all the affordable housing initiatives in town now. And add it to
Affordable
their
Housing
state.
Trust hasn't spent the money that they have now, Peter.
Well, but with the new position, the whole idea is that they're gonna have a administrator now who can implement all these great programs they had, including down payment assistance, I believe.
But only for people who qualify within a certain
Yeah.
income range and can't really afford to buy a house to begin with.
Right. The problem with the Affordable Housing Trust is the CPA limit really constricts the
Yeah,
use for
the-
workforce housing here.
This money wouldn't be from the CPA, that's the point. You know, they'd have some money to use. I'm not, you know,
I
And the
understand.
I don't know if it has to be
The Affordable Housing Trust, by its own statute,
I understand.
cannot do things that aren't related to affordable housing with a capital A, the median income limits.
well,
That's why Provincetown created a second entity to do
okay.
workforce housing, because you
Okay.
can't do it
So-
under affordable housing.
So forget the trust, but I just wanted to correct Steve Cole about CPA. You know, the income limits, it's actually 100% of area median income with CPA money.
I wasn't talking about CPA.
Well, you mentioned 80% being an income.
Well, because there's other financing available from state and federal sources.
Right, well,
I
but
wasn't thinking of CPA, but 100, that's good to hear.
CPA goes to 100, and that's,
Great.
you know, that's what the Affordable Housing Trust is working with. But, so maybe the article could just say to be used for, set aside for affordable housing purposes, or something to let the voters, to make sure that this extra 2% goes to housing.
Well,
You got Rick.
Rick,
Yeah, I might have not been clear with what I said. If it's revised to say that, I will vote against this.
And I guess from Rick's perspective, I think I understand, because I've, had this discussion before in other communities. The usual thing is, just to boil it down, is what if you change your mind, right? And perhaps changing your mind would be, we could use this money to include as an estimated receipt, which reduces taxes for everybody. And that's the common example you get. I'm not saying that's what we do, but, or that's what the select board is contemplating doing. But that's the typical argument you get. Well, we have new money. Why don't we use that new money to not raise property taxes? And that could be, and that might not be what you can do now, because you have other things you want to do, but that ultimately might be what you end up wanting to do with it.
All right?
Steve,
Thank you. Just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting, in my own point of view, that the article should be changed to create something very inflexible. I was suggesting that I'd like to see some greater clarity leaning towards the housing issues expressed by the selectmen. And I would take them at their word that they have an intention to accomplish something. But I think right now, I'm not happy with that, the fact that it's really no clarity yet. You gave reasons why there's no clarity, but I think we should have them. And as to Jackie's question about the amount of money may be insufficient for what I would like to see, I frankly would like to see the first 4% go to it also. So that would.
Perhaps,
triple the
Jackie,
amount of
what we
money.
could work with the board on, and I have to
Well,
get up to date on the language, but there is an ability to identify funding sources for a stabilization fund. And so maybe not having something specific at the moment, we could dedicate it 100% of, or a percentage of this increase to a stabilization fund, which then would be, require town meeting to vote it out for the finally determined purpose at a later date.
it's interesting.
Where does the first 4% go today?
The first 4% on the hotel, on the traditional hotel and motel excise is part of the estimated receipts that we uses to fund the budget. The 4% for short-term rentals, for private rentals, is also a part of that budget, except that we don't budget for it. And then what we did this past year is, to the extent that contributed to free cash, we made sure we allocated it to reserves and didn't use it as to fund the operating budget.
But we could spend it any way we wanted to.
That's
Essentially.
correct.
Right, there's a policy on the boards right now that the selectmen have, that money is dedicated towards getting our stabilization fund up, giving money to OPEB, and then providing for our backlog of capital needs, because we know we have a lot of deferred capital. So those were the 3 priority areas. And, as we're presenting the budget to you tonight, even after this budget is complete, we still have almost $700,000 in free cash. That represents that money from last year.
Well, the money from last year from short-term rentals is what we put into the stabilization fund and OPEB.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
But you know what I'm saying, yeah.
And then to add on to what Jackie said, the discussion that's happened Cape-wide, and one of the reasons for the addition of the short-term rental tax, as well as this Cape and Islands Water Protection Trust, which is the extra 2.75%, is the need to fund wastewater. And so ultimately, if you don't have a need for reserves or for OPEB or for your traditional capital, more likely than not, you're going to have a need for funding wastewater projects.
And I guess, Rick, going back to your thing, when I first came to Eastham in 2014, we were trying to get the Board of Selectmen at the time to pass the meals tax, because we could add a 1% surcharge to the meals tax. And we hadn't done that. And we became, over the course of a few years, because the selectmen were very stubborn about it, the only town on the Cape that didn't collect the meals tax. And in that 10 years, we lost $1 million, because we averaged between $100,000 and $130,000 in revenue. And that $1 million could have been put into anything, including, the general fund, but also anything else we needed. And that really irritated me. I think it was a bad policy decision to leave that money just out there, so.
At risk of starting a very deep philosophical debate, I guess I would add is, I tend to be very practical about some of these things. We're all talking about fungible things. It's like whack-a-mole. And to Jackie's point, you left $1 million on the table for meals tax. So what did that necessitate happening? One form or fashion or another. It's basically the taxpayers got it added to the property taxpayers. Mm-hmm. And so I would equate this similarly to that. Regardless of what you use it for or don't use it for, if you don't fund housing or economic development or wastewater or anything that you might do with this money, and you still want to do it, it's going to come from the taxpayer without the aid of this money. The property taxpayer, I should say. These are different taxpayers.
Everything comes from the taxpayer.
Yeah, Rich, I normally
This
wouldn't.
doesn't come from the taxpayer. Most of this comes from tourists.
Correct.
People who
Right.
It comes from the
Different taxpayers.
it comes from the taxpayer if you spend this on something new. If you don't spend on something new, the taxpayer doesn't pay the same amount of taxes.
Okay, guys, Steve, I think you were saying
No,
something.
let it pass.
Okay. All right, is there any more discussion on Article 8? Which doesn't have a summary. I think my advice to Rich and Jackie is maybe the summary can take away some of the angst of some individuals here, but whatever. None other than, do I hear a motion to approve Article 8?
Do we want to wait until we
Yeah,
got a summary on this one?
I think it matters. I think you should wait.
Okay, we will defer. Okay. Steve, we hope you write a great note to the select.
Remains to be seen.
Okay, Article
What's that, Chief?
9. Article 9 is a home rule petition authorizing the town of Eastham to make permanent utility improvements to private ways and assess betterments therefore. This, we've already had some initial discussion on this from Article 4, which would be with the 65 roads, I think, if my memory's right, Jackie, you can correct me, having private utilities, setting up a system where homeowners, where the town can come in, it looks like can make the improvements themselves, can contract with the public utility company to make those improvements and assess a betterment to cover those costs for that purpose. Being someone who lived through this, I think in general, this is, private utilities, the private utilities, and the Mass PUC sets it up that this is a superb article to try and help. I have one of the things that is surprising to me in Connecticut, if you had this type of situation, the utility Eversource would not be able to charge electric rates to the same extent because they're not delivering the electricity directly to the home. So, but that's not the case in Massachusetts, and so this is an excellent idea. I have one question in this, Jackie. Does this become, or Jackie and Rich, repairing a utility? I'll use the example in Toland Drive because it's just easier for me to do it. We had a break in the first leg of an underground utility going into 62 homes. And we ended up having to go out quickly, a couple of us, putting our names on the line, go out and contract with a private company who came on Monday and did it in one day and got us electricity back for a tune of $10,000 and some change, which was a lot cheaper than I thought. And we have 8 people that wouldn't pay $220 yet, so which is what this thing will help. But by having the town do it, are we now set up to require, in that emergency type situation, that you have to go get 3 bids and that they're prevailing wage because it's over $10,000, et cetera? What does this do? Does this do anything on that contracting in order to try and get a quick and needed repair on electricity?
I don't think so. I think it's Eversource is the
Yeah,
person that does the
Eversource has a
contracting.
requirement that any private road owner needs to use their designated person. So they have a contract with a private contractor in our area that responds in emergencies and will do an emergency repair. But the long-term repair has to go through their engineering department and yada, yada. So no, we would be dealing directly with Eversource because they're the only people that can do it. So
Yeah.
It's a single source kind of thing, and we would deal with them directly.
Okay, that was just a question of how it how it works. You can imagine, we were a little chilly that weekend, and so I don't have, my heart isn't warm to Eversource, but that's okay.
Yeah, and the difference would be, yeah, and that's why I think it's really important that the town develops a relationship with them, that we can deal with these things as a group rather than one emergency at a time.
I am
Yep.
100%.
Could I have a question, Jerry?
Yeah, Russ.
In the summary, it says the developer failed to complete the final step of turning the service over to Eversource. Does the developer, I assume it's the same for all 65 roads, maybe different developer. Is there any liability for the developer? Can we go after them if this is something that may cost the town or the people a mistake that they made?
Yeah, Russ, I would love to. This has been a conundrum for me since I came, to this level of municipal work. It's just it was a Wild West situation in the 60s and 70s, and developers were creating subdivisions, and because they were private, they didn't have to meet our road specifications, and they didn't have to do all kinds of things, right? And then it was up to the developer and the homeowners who bought those first homes to follow through and do what they needed to do. And many of them didn't. So for Thoreau Drive, 35 years later, the homeowners find out that, nobody turned it over to Eversource, and Eversource is like, we're not going to fix it with our dime. You have to fix it and then give it to us, and then we'll take it.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
understand that, but it's,
So I guess what you're saying, Jackie, is there really isn't a recourse of going back and going after,
No.
Any of these developers.
Well, this particular developer is not alive. But I mean, we've run into the same scenarios. For instance, Steve mentioned Hay Road. Hay Road was another one of those. They're very, very complicated.
Yeah, the developer of my development is not alive either, Russ. So it was 1978. It was approved by the town of Eastham, but that's the only paper I could find on it. And when you don't have electricity, you just go fix it. Let's go. Thank God it wasn't below freezing.
But the difference with this is that we will go ahead and fix it. And then
Yes, I think it's great.
the residents will be charged the betterment. They can pay that immediately and avoid any, interest charges, or they can pay it over time. I think it just gives us some ability to assist people. If they can't afford to pay it at all, then, we'll make some arrangements with them. But
Right.
I disagree with you, Jackie, on the Wild West. Eastham is the wild east. I mean, when I first came to the finance committee, all of the things that this town would not vote for prior to, my time here, based on the fact that, we don't need this, or it's too expensive, and it just turned out that, 30 years later, pay me now or pay me later, and later is more expensive.
Oh, amen to that. All right. The other point on this, a question, Jackie and Rich. Article 9 sets up the process and the authority to be able to do it, and Article 9A sets up the expenditure.
well, that's how we did it. That's how we did it officially. But then when we realized that it was going to be a free cash transfer, we moved that money into that free cash transfer line. So I don't believe there is a necessity now for that second.
Oh, for Article 9A?
9A, I think we can just take off.
Okay, good. All right, thank you, Jackie. Do any other questions or comments? All right, do I hear a motion to approve Article 9?
I'll make the motion.
Russ,
Second,
That was George, if I remember. Yeah. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and I will also be a yes on this one. 8-0. So Article 9A, we will defer, hoping that it will be eliminated. Am I correct? Is that a good statement, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay. We'll defer that, so we don't have to deal with that one. Article 10, which is authorize the lease term up to 30 years in Northeastham for solar. Developing and sponsoring and installing solar photovoltaic energy systems. So let's have any questions on this or comments. I think, Peter, you sent around some articles.
Yeah, I just sent a little background that I'd come across in the Open Space Committee has run into, and that we give some thought to the idea, there's a fair amount of, disagreement maybe over the advisability of cutting down trees to put solar panels in. And those articles, I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at them, but there are quite a few organizations that have studied the issue. And basically the fallout is that it should be a last resort, that solar panels definitely save carbon, but so do trees. And so I think the advice of most of these organizations is put your panels on rooftops, previously disturbed areas, carports or parking lot ports, and save the cutting of trees till all other locations have been exhausted. So I'm just concerned as a member of this committee about the third item listed for the locations, where it lists all those different parcels on Old County Road, which is up by the town well in Northeastham, and it's all forested, and when you add them all together, it's over 24 acres of forested land butting the seashore. And so I'm of the opinion that I'm not really excited about voting for this with all those lots included in it. And I think there may be other, but we'll find out, but other people in town, voters, that may feel the same way.
Yeah,
Those lots listed don't, we can't list portions of lots. But the intention, and I could get the information out, is basically it is a previously disturbed area where it's the west part of the well house parcel between the well house that has a paved lot and has disturbed and has run water line from the well house, and it's between the well house and the Eversource easement. And so it was previously disturbed, and it's just the front part of that parcel. So I'll have to get that out to the committee for you to see that. So it's certainly not 24 acres going into the woods. It's between the Eversource easement and the well house where the water line was previously run through.
Roughly
So-
5+ acres, Rich?
So it's
I'm looking at a
three
map for you.
to 3 to 5 acres, and more likely than not, just the 3.
But the way this article is written, it gives it authorizes the selectmen to enter into leases on all 24 acres.
It does, right? But it would have to be approved by the select board, whatever the developer suggests, and we're not going to be requesting development on 24 acres. We've requesting development on 3 to 5.
So the 3 to 5 aren't on all, they're not a part of all of these lots, these parcels, 6 parcels. The 3 to 5 acres is probably all on one parcel, isn't it? Or maybe 2 at the most.
I think it crosses at least 2. That's a good point, Peter. I could go back and look at the map because originally we were looking at a different configuration that ultimately ended up changing. Originally, we were looking to do the, it would have, you're right, would have cleared more trees and it would have been to the east of the well house going into the woods, further into the woods. And now we've settled it on to the east, west of the well house, adjacent to the easement, which is less trees, and that did reconfigure the lot. So I'll have to go back and double check those parcel IDs to make, and I'll get the map out to the committee to make sure we're all on the same page.
Maybe the map could show the part that's been disturbed previously.
Yeah, Rich, I would like to, you know, before I vote on this article, I would like to, you know, get a serious map and, you know, indicate where it's been disturbed and what are the financial implementations of it. And thirdly, if this is for all 24 acres of that property, I will not vote for it.
Yeah, okay. I think Rich is going to get us some information back. I very seldom do I receive emails from the general public, but I have on this article basically saying what Peter has raised. So there is some issue on that, and so I think we probably will wait. We can defer this one. I do have a question before we defer it, so I can, just to make sure, the town hall campus and the DPW, these would be solar panels on existing roofs or canopies over parking lots? What's viewed in those two areas?
So so just to be clear here, we don't need town meeting authorization on roofs. That's the select board has the authority to issue a lease for a length of term on a town building.
Okay.
But anything that's not on the building is considered land, which has a separate law requirement, which you're limited to 3 years. And so you need town meeting approval for anything over 3 years on land. And so the reason asking it for the town hall and DPW is because this would be canopy, which is in the parking areas. Now, there's you have competing legal opinions. Some attorneys say you don't need to get town meeting approval. Others think you might, but they're not sure. And so we're playing it safe and asking town meeting to give us the ability to do 30 years. And the intention here is to install solar canopy at these sites.
Okay, so
over the transfer station area is the transfer station where the drop off is. The second area is in front of the DPW building, their parking area. And then on the outskirts of the town hall campus along the backside of the parking lot, with the exception of behind the fire station, because they have a need for their apparatus to back out through there.
Okay. Thank you for that. So my view
Has a
is.
question, Jerry.
Jerry, Rick wants to hit.
Yeah, go ahead.
As part of the follow-up, and I think Russ stated this, I want to see what financially viable means. I assume it means positive cash flow, but I think we need to flesh that out a little bit.
Well, the way this works is there's no cash out on behalf of the town. You put these out to bid and you ask a developer to give you a proposal. And so that's, another thing is we're not going to have exactly what it looks like because different developers might propose different things and the select board would have to approve that. And it would also have to get permitted and go through the various committees, zoning and it's a municipal project, but we'd still run it through the usual zoning and building permitting process and make sure it meets all the same regulatory requirements. And then they offer to you, for the ability to do that, is they offer you a payment. And so whether or not that whether or not the payment they're offering is enough to convince you that, usually the canopies aren't too problematic, but I can certainly understand over at the well house and ground mounts and trees being more problematic.
So we won't really have a dollar figure though on what the estimated revenue would be?
Well, I had done a preliminary, just for back of the envelope, what might we be talking about? And for a larger array over at the well house, it would have been upwards of 200,000. But for the scaled back version that we're talking about now, I would say the ballpark is about 100,000 for planning purposes. But that all depends on any number of things. It depends on the timing, because there's different tariffs and the SMART program at the state that developers can take advantage of. It's more attractive now than it is planned to be next year. Yet, we have an infrastructure bill coming out perhaps that might add more incentives to things. So timing is everything. And that's what the developers do, is they identify, all the things that they can tap into to make a project feasible for them. And then depending on that, that's how, it's competitive as to how much they'll offer to the town in a payout.
And the other issue is that, we're receiving a lot of pressure from the community to get to net zero. And this will help us, towards that goal. So that's why we're doing the green communities. That's why Rich is working so hard on solar right now.
And that's a good objective. I just think we need to understand the cost of the steps towards net zero.
And Jackie, could this be rewritten so that it doesn't cover the entire 24 acres? It covers only the specific areas you want to do now. The other areas could be worked on at some other time if that is appropriate.
I think what we've done is done this so that it's flexible for the developer, but the select board was kind of clear that they wanted it in a certain area. So, let Rich look at the parcel numbers again, and we'll check with council, and we'll get you the map that they used. And I think with those pieces of information together, you'll be more favorable.
Yeah, great.
I don't think, there might be an extra parcel that we don't need, so that clearly could come off if that's the case. And then I'm pretty sure that we're not allowed to take, specific measurements, and it's either the full parcel or not, but we can get town council to opine on that. So it's, what happens is these parcels run from west to east as a long parcel.
Yeah.
We're only planning on using the very westernmost piece of the parcel, but it has all the acreage that's to the east. So, you end up with 24 acres, but you're only planning on using 3.
Yeah. Got a question, Rich. I noticed that all these parcels in the area you're talking about abuts over the power lines, the Eversource right away. My wife happened to be on a call last night, and with people from Harwich that have planted a community garden in the Eversource right away in Harwich. Has anyone looked into putting solar panels in the previously disturbed right of way, electric right of way? Ever? Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know. I think we'd have
It'd be a
to.
great place for them. You wouldn't have to cut any trees. It would keep down the weeds that they're so concerned about and want to spray for. And
I mean, you can ask them, Peter. They're they have very, very clear definitions of what you can put in an easement, and it's all about temporary. So I can't imagine who would want to put a solar panel array in something that might have to be moved, and they just demand that it be moved when they need it moved, so.
Yeah, it's probably a non-starter.
Yeah, well, think about the poles that they had to put in and so forth, and all the construction vehicles going in and out just recently right away. They would have chewed up those solar panels, that's for sure.
Yeah, I guess the garden in Harwich just figured it was worth the risk, but you probably wouldn't want them build a solar array in there.
All right, so,
Jerry. Hello?
yes, yes.
I have a question. It's a small one, and I may be geographically challenged. But do we mean Old County Road, or do we mean
Oh,
Norset?
yeah.
The
It's,
summary refers to Zero Norset Road.
yeah,
The street address in the article refers to Old County Road.
Good catch. I'll have to double
Summary
check.
says
yeah. I entered, I searched for Old County Road and all those lots came up as 0 Old County Road or,
Okay, well then the summary may need to be reviewed, that's
I
all.
think so, yeah.
Yeah, the old, they kept the old Nauset Road, 0 Nauset, that's the piece of land that we're going to be selling.
Well, there's some Nauset Road pieces up in
Yeah,
that
maybe,
area.
Well, I don't think we need to answer it, I just wanted
Yeah.
to say you
got it
got some
correct.
inconsistency.
They gotta be consistent.
Yeah,
No, I think it's probably a 0 County Road parcel. Maybe we could just say, which is off of Nauset Road.
right.
Okay.
All right, I
Yeah,
think we're going to
Rich.
defer, oh, Steve, do you have something else?
Rich,
Rich?
I've got a question for
Right.
Rich. Old County Road, isn't Old County Road from, off
Massasoit.
of Massasoit down to Route 6?
Route 6.
And
Yeah,
it
you're asking me to
crosses-
interpret these old historical paths. I don't think it's a
That's
real
another-
road. It's just.
No, it does cross Route 6 and go towards Nauset Road. It's just not a real road.
It
It's a
used to be.
paper road.
It's a paper road.
But there's
Okay,
all kinds of wood lots that are off of it because it was made as a paper road. And so all the wood lots that some of which Rich is using are off of it.
Well, there's a real Old County Road from, no, that's country, never mind.
Okay, that's all right. I believe we're going to defer Article 10.
correct.
And if I look at things, I don't think Articles 11, 12, and 13 are ready for prime time at this point. Am I correct?
That's correct.
correct.
All right, so we will defer on those. So we'll defer 11, 12, and 13. So that brings us to, I can't believe it.
CPA.
It's Article 14, the Community Preservation Committee recommended appropriations and projects. Here we go. Peter, do you want to say? Well,
We're-
this one
We're
here,
on 14?
Article 14. This is,
What happened to 11?
We're deferring it.
we're deferring 11, 12, and 13
Okay.
because they're not ready for prime time.
I'd say, Jerry, if anybody has any questions, but
Yeah, this is pretty much straightforward, like we have in other years. It just, the Housing Institute, which is the appropriations and revenues, that's 10% go to each go to 4 separate reserves: open space, historic preservation, affordable housing, and active recreation. The rest, there's 5% of the entire budget can go to administration expenses, which we never hit, but it's done. And the rest goes into a major reserve, which can be used for any of those projects. The Housing Institute, the Affordable Housing Trust numbers are the same as they've been in past years. D is in Delta. There is an affordable housing project which is being
Cape Cod 5.
proposed.
Cape Cod 5 near Shaw's in Orleans. They've asked for $100,000 from the CPA funds from Eastham. Orleans provided $100,000 from their CPA funds for Nauset Green. So this is the kind of a working together that the towns in the Outer Cape are trying to do. That's what this 100,000 is.
By the way, it's the same developer that did
Penrose.
North Green.
Yes, Penrose, yes, same developer, who knew all about everything's here, but that's okay. The Field of Dreams, 70,000 to resurface the playground area, that new playground right now has wood chips, and they want to put in a rubberized foam, which is fairly durable. It reduces maintenance. The chips don't go all over the place, and it's actually safer for the children. The largest one is F, which is the Nauset Lighthouse for $180,000. There's provisions that the committee put on. They're doing some collections, and they have to, any funds they receive have to go into there. They're going at the lighthouse. What is it? The Lighthouse Fund? I can't even remember what it's named. Preservation Society is going to Frito-Lay to try and get some funds there because that's the lighthouse on Cape Cod potato chips. So all of those funds have to come out before they use CPA funds to do repairs within the lighthouse and paint the outside again. And then there's
Jerry, on that
Yeah.
one, we should mention that, they got a very detailed proposal from an outfit that does lighthouses and has worked with the National Park Service before. So the 180,000 is not just, is an accurate number.
Yeah, this is a top-notch firm that does it. And then you've got an interpretive program for Sandy Meadows, putting up things for the blind, Braille announcements and announcements of what signage is and trying to make them Braille as well. And then you know H better than I do, Peter.
Does it say Braille in the article anywhere? Because I think Karen Strauss found out that the people that know about that stuff are moving away from Braille, and they have different apps and stuff that they're using now. So I thought,
Okay.
yeah, and I don't think the CPC didn't require that they do Braille. It was just a suggestion that they look into that. Yeah.
And when we reviewed these, we made sure they were broad enough to accommodate any, change like that. So
Yeah.
it doesn't require anything specific.
Okay. And H is, what's H?
That's the Higgins property?
The
Yeah,
land, well, it's a sort of a pilot land stewardship program, and one of the members of the Open Space Committee is working on getting
an app.
probably says it better in the summary, but it's an app for your phones that you can take with you, and if you find someone's dumps something in the open space land, you can mark it on your GPS and kind of create a database of or if you see invasive species growing that weren't there before, and keep track of what's happening so that the land can be maintained and the trails can be maintained for the public use. She's actually got some high school volunteers from the high school to work with her on this, since they're so close there. And I guess the cross-country team uses that property, or there's the trails through there for some of their training.
Yeah, they used to. I don't know if they do it all the time now.
Oh, yeah.
Because how close it is to the range, the shooting range. But whatever. Any questions on the CPA funds? We did talk about the fact that the Affordable Housing Coordinator funds are coming out of the CPA funds, but they will be included in Article 2 as a source in Article 2 for that coordinator. Any questions? Yes.
Jerry, and I don't know who this is for, maybe Peter. On F, Nauset Lighthouse, the last sentence says, which may
That's,
include,
that's an error, Russ. That should be, I just was gonna say something. That should be struck out. It's only for the housing ones.
Yeah, so was I. That's
okay.
Good
I was
catch,
just
Russ.
wondering why it was there.
kind of interesting, Russ, though, because normally CPA grants for historical preservation projects require a historic restriction. But we found out that the seashore, the National Park Service won't allow historic restrictions, and they've been through this before, so we learned that we don't have to have a historic restriction on that lighthouse, that it's already covered by the National Seashore Rules and Regulations. I just had one question, Jerry, about the summary of D. It states that the proposed rental housing project is under development, but it really isn't yet, is it, Jackie? Jackie and Rich it hasn't been voted on by Orleans.
I think they may have just approved it.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah, I think they,
Has to be town meeting, right?
Well, it's under development in the sense that there's a contract between the town and the developer, just like we had.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
Yeah,
fine.
and the funds won't go out until,
the
think they
closing, yeah,
the closing, the funds won't go out till closing.
Right.
Right.
it's an amazing procedure. I hope I never have to do that again. Those affordable housing closings are just crazy.
awful.
There's like 19 agencies and lawyers on the call.
Ugh.
Okay, anyway, no more questions?
Jerry, the way this was written was that it's one article that should expedite town meeting. And so you can
Right.
do your recommendations on the one article, but
Yeah,
in the event town meeting or you or anybody want to parse their recommendations as to a particular line item, you're welcome to do that. But if you just do the whole one, that's great too.
Yeah, that's how we were generally doing with the whole one. Do I hear a motion on Article 14?
I make the motion that Article 14 be approved.
I'll second it.
And Russ is a second. Any further discussion? Go to a vote, Steve.
Jerry, I will vote yes, but I need to be recorded as recusing myself
right.
from paragraph B, because it's administered by the Community Development Partnership, which gets this
Right.
fund.
Why don't we do this then? Mary and Russ, will you take back your motion in second?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll do this. Do I hear a motion on Article 14, subsections A, C, D, E,
F, G,
F,
H.
G, and H?
Okay, yeah. I make a
Okay.
motion that the Article 14, numbers A, C, D, E, F, G, H be approved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Russ is a second. Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, I'll go to a vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes,
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and I will vote yes as well. Now, do I hear a motion to approve Article 14?
14B.
B is in Bravo.
so moved.
That's Russ.
No,
Peter.
Peter.
No, that was Peter.
Yeah,
Okay.
broke my
Peter.
silence.
Do I have a second?
And I decided to shut up.
I'll second.
Who seconded, Jerry?
I'll second.
I didn't hear a second yet.
Tom said.
Tom,
Tom.
Tom said.
Tom seconded. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we'll go through the vote, and I think, Steve, you're recusing yourself.
Yes, and thank you for doing this, Jerry.
Okay. Okay, Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and I vote yes, so the vote was 7-0. Okay,
With one,
Can you record it as 701?
one.
yeah, I guess we recorded one, although that usually looks like an abstention, and you're not an abstention, you're a recusal, but that's
No, that's a
fine.
good point. That's an interesting point. Okay.
Yeah, it'll just show as 7-0.
Because
I
people
can't-
are gonna ask why somebody did.
Well,
what-
but we also, it's not an absence. Okay, whatever you feel is right is fine with me. Thank you.
I don't mind. Oh, on the public record, anyway, to look at this, you recused yourself, Steve, so you're okay.
Thank you, Jack.
I never thought we'd get through. Now, we have some deferrals. Let me first ask Jackie and Rich, when do you think we will have those articles ready so that this committee can review and vote on them? I mean, we can do a meeting next week, which would be the 21st, or we could try and push it to the 28th, which would be 2 days before you're going to the printer.
I would recommend the 28th because the select board isn't meeting again until the 26th. And I want them to discuss the 4 to 6.
I
Good
agree.
thinking,
I
Jackie.
agree fully, Jackie. That's great. That also gives you a little more time to write the letter.
Exactly.
All right. I appreciate it. Jackie, do you have anything else that you want to raise to us? I know we're right. I promised everybody 7. It's only 7:06. So is there anything you want to raise other than what we've done?
No.
Okay.
We have a great administrator and great manager or what?
And hopefully no one has any new business. Am I correct?
Will you
Good.
take a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion to
Motion.
adjourn?
All 8 of us do that.
All right.
Okay. Steve, you raised it, so you made the motion to adjourn. And I
There
saw
you go.
Tom's hand first, so he seconded it. So we got to go through a vote. Steve,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Russ,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
and Jerry's a yes. And Roy, this is the last chance. You can say, no, I don't want to join these guys anymore.